Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, November 12, 2024. The House and Senate returned to session to finish the 118th Congress, and House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, promises to hit the ground running in the next Congress on President-elect Donald Trump's America First agenda. We'll also hear from Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, who is currently Majority Leader but will move into the Minority Party in January when Republicans take over the Senate. President-elect Trump announces new members of his administration. Congressman Mike Walz, Republican of Florida, to be National Security Advisor. Former Arkansas Governor, Republican Mike Huckabee, nominated as U.S. Ambassador to Israel. And reports of Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, to be Secretary of State. We'll talk with The Hill's White House correspondent Alex Gangitano about the team coming together in the second Donald Trump administration. President Joe Biden meets Israeli President Isaac Herzog at the White House as the State Department confirms Israel will not lose U.S. military aid for having missed a 30-day deadline to increase humanitarian aid reaching Gaza. State Department saying Israel has made good but limited progress. President Biden's special envoy for climate, John Podesta, speaks at the United Nations Climate Summit in Azerbaijan about what the incoming Trump administration means for climate change policy. And at the Supreme Court, a case involving a mafia family murder plot that poses the question, if no force or threat of force is used, can you still charge it as a crime of violence? Start with an update on the legal cases involving President-elect Trump. This from NBC News. The judge overseeing Donald Trump's New York criminal trial delayed a key ruling Tuesday on whether the president-elect's conviction should be set aside, according to correspondence between the parties. Trump's team wants the case dismissed, and the prosecution says it needs time to evaluate next steps now that Trump has been elected for a second term. The court has granted them a week's delay to provide their position, the clerk informed both sides in a court filing. And from Associated Press, House Speaker Mike Johnson said Tuesday that Republicans are ready to deliver President-elect Donald Trump's agenda after his election victory, insisting the GOP won't make the mistakes of last time and will be much better prepared for a second-term Trump White House. That was from AP. Speaker Johnson spoke on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, along with the House Republican leadership team.
This leadership will hit the ground running to deliver President Trump's agenda in the 119th Congress, and we will work closely with him and his administration to turn this country around and unleash, as he says, a new golden age in America. That's not a campaign slogan. We believe that that is true. We believe in our hearts that America's best days are ahead of us, and we're excited to deliver upon that promise. The only way we're able to work quickly is because we have unified control of the Congress, both chambers now in the White House, beginning January. And I want to congratulate all our Republican incumbents who worked so hard to ensure their re-elections and our new members who helped us to keep this House majority, especially a couple of new members that flipped districts from red to blue, people like Tom Barrett and Ryan McKenzie, Rob Bresnahan, Tim Moore, Addison McDowell, Brad Knott, Gabe Evans, from different states around the country who worked really hard to ensure that we could have Republicans return to those seats. And we have an amazing group of freshman members who are going to join our conference, the Patriots who are already here and who are ready to implement this agenda on day one. Now, as we sit here this morning, we're still watching a number of races. We have races still pending in Alaska, Arizona, California, Maine, Ohio, and Oregon. And we're going to ensure that every single legal vote is counted in those races. So while we're completing the work of this Congress, we're shifting gears and preparing for the next Congress. We're also still in campaign mode in some sense and awaiting the final outcome of these races. Looking ahead over the past year, I've been working with our committee chairs and our Senate colleagues to lay the groundwork for this America First agenda. It will grow our economy and reduce inflation. It will secure our borders. We will restore America's energy dominance once again. We'll implement educational freedom, and we will drain the swamp. And that's just the beginning of the agenda. This leadership team standing behind me has been preparing for this moment, and we are ready to deliver on America's mandate in the next Congress. When President Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016, we all look back and recognize that the Republican Party was not fully prepared for that moment, and precious time was wasted in the beginning of that Congress. I know it well because that was my freshman year in Congress. We began in 2017. We are not going to make those mistakes again. We will be ready on day one. We are prepared this time. And as we wind down the 118th Congress, we'll be ready to take the ball and run full speed in the 119th Congress that begins in January.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building at a news conference today with other members of the House Republican leadership. He also said he's working to see if President-elect Trump can visit House Republicans Wednesday morning before he meets President Biden at the White House, talking about the transition to the administration. And the speaker said he does not expect President Trump will choose any more House Republican members for positions in his administration, which would create vacancies until special elections can be called. And given the thin majority the Republicans could have, might create difficulties passing their agenda if Democrats oppose that agenda. Associated Press at cspan.org with the election results showing 214 House Republicans, 205 House Democrats, and 16 races still to be called. 218 is a majority. The composition of the U.S. Senate in the 119th Congress is now set. 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats, which will include 2 independents who plan to caucus with them. Republicans taking the Senate majority from the Democrats, which means that the current majority leader, Chuck Schumer of New York, will lose that title. He spoke on the Senate floor today.
1 week ago, a near record number of Americans carried on the grand tradition of voting in a national election and of passing the torch peacefully. There are many things we can say about what happened last Tuesday. It was not the result many of us wanted. But we live in a democracy where the will of the people is respected and followed, and the American people have spoken. I congratulate President-elect Trump on his victory, and I look forward to speaking with him soon. And I congratulate Vice President Harris and Governor Walz for running a historic campaign. They can be proud of the incredible work their team has done over the last 4 months. The values Vice President Harris ran on will live on: individual freedom, opportunity for all, and working together to build a safer, stronger nation. And for those of us who have been given the honor of representing the people of our states, we look forward to serving, to governing, to working in a principled and bipartisan fashion to reward the trust the American people have placed in us. Now, to my fellow Democrats across America, it's natural and appropriate to feel deep disappointment, grief, and even anger in this moment. I understand those feelings. It never feels good to come up short. But when you do, you get up, you dust yourself off, you learn, and you prepare to do better in the future. You study what occurred. We will do that. You listen to what voters are saying, and you find ways to make government responsive to those wants and desires, those dreams, those needs. And you also take the approval of the voters from places we each represent, those voters who sent us back to the Senate, and carry forth the principles we campaigned on and we won on. And you find ways to put those principles into practice as much as possible, while finding ways to work in a bipartisan fashion to get things done. As I told my caucus this week, we should regard this election not merely as a defeat, but more importantly, as a challenge. The American people have presented us with a challenge, and we must answer the call. We have to look at what we did right, what we did wrong, and what we didn't do but should have done.
The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, today on the Senate floor. Later in his speech, he talked more about bipartisanship in the next Congress.
To my Republican colleagues, I offer a word of caution in good faith. Take care not to misread the will of the people, and do not abandon the need for bipartisanship. After winning an election, the temptation may be to go to the extreme. We've seen that happen over the decades, and it's consistently backfired on the party in power. So instead of going to the extremes, I remind my colleagues that this body is most effective when it's bipartisan. If we want in the next 4 years the Senate to be as productive as the last 4, the only way that will happen is through bipartisan cooperation. Democrats will be ready to do what we have consistently done. Work with both sides when the opportunity arises. Democrats will never abandon our values, but neither will we reject an opportunity to move the ball forward to make people's lives better when we can. The question is now whether or not Republicans are willing to do the same. To my colleagues on the other side, once again, do not abandon bipartisanship. It's the best and most effective way to get things done. It was true in the last 4 years and will be true in the years to come.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, today on the Senate floor. A story from Politico. Senator Schumer has extended Senate orientation invitations to Pennsylvania Republican Dave McCormick and Arizona Democrat Ruben Gallego after previously withholding them while their respective races remain unsettled. Schumer previously insisted the Pennsylvania race had not yet been decided, despite the Associated Press calling it for McCormick over incumbent Democrat Bob Casey, who has yet to concede. Spokesperson for Schumer said in a statement on Sunday, "We will invite the winner once the votes are counted." The AP called Gallego's race late Monday night, marking the final Senate race call of the 2024 elections. Spokesperson for Schumer said Tuesday morning Ruben Gallego and David McCormick have been invited to attend orientation. That was from Politico. Associated Press shows that in Arizona, with 95% of the votes counted, Ruben Gallego beating Republican nominee Carrie Lake 50% to 47.8%. That amounts to about 72,000 votes out of 3.1 million cast. Senator-elect Gallego declared victory Monday night, Veterans Day, at American Legion Post in Phoenix.
We've gone to the reddest parts of the state, gone to the bluest parts of the state. We've gone to the parts of the state that have not been visited by anyone and shown respect and asked for their opinion and asked for them to be part of the process. And what I've learned from every part of this state, from Democrats, Republicans, Independents, is that we all just want a better life for ourselves and the ability to give our kids the best possible future that they could have. So that's exactly what I'm going to fight for in the Senate. And I'll work with anyone to get that job done for nuestras familias and for Arizona. I'll fight to secure fight to fix our broken immigration system and security. I'll fight to lower costs on everything, gas, groceries, rent, and more. I'd like to make sure. Tuition? I thought you graduated already.
Our kids.
But let's not just forget also our veterans today.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure that our veterans who have done everything they can, who have served their country, who we were very quick to send to war, when they get back, we're not as quick to give them the services and VA services that they deserve, that they are not forgotten when everyone is there fighting for them. And of course, I'll always defend abortion rights, because no politician has a right to tell a woman what she can do with her body. So thank you, Arizona. Thank you for all the Arizonans who supported me, the Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. And for those that did not support me or did not vote for me, please know I will always still fight for you. I will treat you with respect, and we may not agree all the time, but I will always do my best to serve you. As hard as I fought to get out of poverty, and as hard as I fight now for my family, as hard as I fought in the Marines, I will fight for Arizona in Washington, D.C.
Senator-elect Ruben Gallego, Democrat of Arizona, Monday night in Phoenix. He will be the first Latino senator ever elected from Arizona. His Republican opponent, Carrie Lake, has not conceded. In fact, she's still contesting in court her loss in 2022 in the governor's race. Senator-elect Gallego now in Washington, D.C., along with the 9 other new senators entering in the 119th Congress. Story from Roll Call. Over the course of several hours Tuesday morning, newly elected members of the House trickled in and out of a hotel several blocks south of the Capitol, getting their first taste of the press corps as they geared up for a 10-day crash course on all things Congress. The orientation features trainings and informational sessions and guest speakers. The newbies will pose for a class photo and later next week participate in a room lottery to see exactly where they'll work in the 119th Congress. Part of the article from Roll Call, the orientation hosted by the House Administration Committee. A few of the members-elect stopped by to talk to reporters. Bob Onder is a Republican from Missouri.
What are they telling you in there so far? How's the first day?
Oh, we're just getting oriented, getting our technology, our phones, our laptops. Really, it's just the beginning. We got in here yesterday. Looking forward to getting oriented to the 119th Congress and getting to work in January.
Anything surprising you so far?
No. Been through orientation in the Missouri House, the Missouri Senate. It's pretty routine stuff, but we'll get to work tomorrow.
How does it feel coming into Congress for the majority?
Oh, it's an exciting time. We have a chance to make history the first 100 days. Yeah, we have a chance to make history the first 100 days. It'll be an exciting time with President Trump in the White House, Republican control of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. We're gonna make our country great again.
Do you know caucuses you're trying to join?
No, not at this point. I'm just learning where the bathrooms are, and we're gonna get to work for the people of Missouri and the people of the country.
Do you know who you'll support for GOP conference chair?
Yeah, right now I'm just getting to know people. I don't know most of the players in this town.
So probably along.
Yeah.
Say your name.
It's Bob Onder, Missouri District 3.
Has any of your previous experience been able to set you up for what's about to happen?
Yeah, I think it'll be useful. It's very different at the state versus the federal level. But I spent 10 years in the Missouri legislature serving the people of Missouri, and I think it'll be very similar.
What are you most looking forward to learning over the course of this next week?
Oh, this next week, process. Of course, I'm sure there are a lot of similarities, but I'm sure a lot of differences as well. And more than that, getting to know people. Relationships are very important as you seek to represent the people of your state.
Congressman-elect Bob Onder, Republican of Missouri, speaking to reporters outside the hotel in Washington, where new members of Congress are starting their orientation sessions. This is Washington Today. The Hill's White House correspondent, Alex Gangitano, has an article that begins, President-elect Trump is assembling his cabinet and senior staff for his second term in the White House before taking office in January. Trump must nominate leaders for 15 government agencies and other top administration jobs that require Senate confirmation, along with appointing senior staff. We'll talk with that reporter in just a moment. First, one of the appointments made official today, Congressman Mike Walz, Republican of Florida, to be White House National Security Advisor. He's a former U.S. Army Green Beret. And a couple of weeks ago, he was interviewed on C-SPAN 2's Book TV about his new book, Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. One of the topics was his suggestion to use Green Beret units to help Mexico fight drug cartels.
I'm not, as the media sometimes kind of portrays it, advocating for putting the Marines in Mexico City, but with just a very small footprint, you can bring in offensive cyber. You can start kind of jamming up their communications, their cash, putting them on their back foot, disrupting their operations. That's the type of unconventional thinking and warfare that I, talk about in the book, and takes kind of a different mindset, a different way of thinking and leading. In one chapter, I call it bottoms up leadership. To what I think face the unconventional threats and the hybrid warfare that we're seeing all over the world.
Yeah, and so are you pushing for this kind of special forces Green Beret presence in Mexico to further, to help advise the Mexican military?
Yeah, well, look, the initial pushback obviously is, hey, the Mexican government isn't on board. The Colombian government is. If you really look at the history of it, the Pastrana's government in Colombia was not initially. President Clinton and then Bush said, look, we're going to do this one way or another. We prefer you work with us. I think we need to take that approach with the Mexican government, given the destabilization that's happening on our southern border, the migrant flows, the fentanyl deaths and others. But even if we took a standoff approach and apply space assets, cyber assets, better intelligence to support law enforcement, I think that would be a far better and more bold approach to dealing with these cartels that, again, are paramilitary organizations armed to the teeth with billions at their disposal and who do not mean us well. So I think there's obviously negotiation room, and should be, with what you have on the ground or what you don't, but it's applying those critical military assets that we should be doing.
Congressman Mike Walz, Republican of Florida, author of Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. On C-SPAN 2's Book TV's Afterwards program a couple of weeks ago, he has just been named White House National Security Advisor in the second Trump administration starting in January. Alex Gangitano, The Hill's White House correspondent, has been looking at President-elect Donald Trump's choices so far for his cabinet and advisors. And she joins us now. Thanks for being with us. Let's start with Mike Walz. Who is he? What does he bring to this position?
Yeah, very good question. NSC is definitely a top position. We know how closely they tend to work with whatever president is in office. So Mike Walz is a Army veteran who was the first Green Beret ever elected to Congress. He's been representing Florida in the House of Representatives since 2019. And some interesting background into how he kind of looks at the world, what he could bring to the table is he's called for Europe to do more to support Ukraine and for the U.S. to be more stringent in its support, basically thinking, the U.S. has taken the lead on this too much. Europe needs to step up more. That aligns with a lot of the key foreign policy goals of President-elect Trump. And he's been a really staunch, outspoken critic of the Biden administration, especially in its handling of the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan. Republicans have been extremely critical of that, but he's been one that's, as an Army veteran himself, was really outspoken. And we know that was, kind of a really negative spot on the president's legacy. We just saw a statement. Trump officially said, I've asked him to serve in my cabinet. And interestingly, he actually was in the Army Special Forces. I didn't realize how long. It was for 27 years and deployed to multiple missions. So, definitely has a big history there.
Of the handful of appointments and nominations we know so far from President-elect Trump, a number of them deal with foreign affairs. Who are the others and how do they fit in? That's
right. He was really focused on getting this national security team together quickly, it seems like. One of them is a biggie, Secretary of State for Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. He has been seen around, the halls of Congress as a foreign policy hawk. He's tough on China. He's tough on Iran. To be Trump's top diplomat is a really drastic turnaround from the Rubio-Trump relationship of 2016 when they were rivals during the presidential primary. The president-elect was critical of him and condescending to an extent. So it's an interesting turnaround. That's a big name. We also know Congresswoman Elise Stefanik for the UN ambassador, looking at foreign policy experience. She has limited diplomatic experience and has actually been an outspoken critic of the United Nations as a whole and a staunch ally of Israel. So that'll be interesting to see what she does, up in New York for the UN. And then otherwise, we have some interesting picks for a mix of, national security, but also with Homeland Security more so, people that will be representing Trump's immigration policy starting on day one, since we know that's such a priority for him.
And the selection for Homeland Security Secretary, Governor of South Dakota.
That's right. So she's an interesting one. She has been a staunch Trump supporter, Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. She's somebody who was actually floated for Trump's running mate before Senator Vance was picked. But if you remember, months ago, early excerpts of her book came out that revealed that she killed her hunting dog some 20 years ago, and that became a really big point of controversy. And she kind of quietly got taken off of the list as a running mate. But she's someone who has had Trump's back, outspoken, saw her on the campaign trail. So, it's somewhat of a reward here. But Trump also knows how loyal he is to her, so it makes sense that he would pick her to oversee his immigration crackdown in this second term. Another person who's been loyal to Trump through and through will also be working a lot on immigration. That's Stephen Miller, who's been selected as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. He was one of his closest advisors during the Trump term and was actually the architect of some of these policies like the Muslim ban from 4 years ago, but also family separation. So we know he'll have a big hand in the efforts to enact this immigration crackdown. And then lastly, Tom Homan. He's actually a former immigration and customs enforcement director. He was named the quote-unquote border czar, which, side note, is interesting because President Biden put Vice President Harris at the helm of looking at the root causes of migration, and she got quickly labeled a border czar as like a critical thing from Republicans. Well, now Trump is officially giving somebody this title as border czar. But Homan, we've seen him already speak in some interviews and saying that he wants to crank up workplace raids as a way to address labor and sex trafficking, to look at, who is here in the country illegally. And we think that he'll enact the kind of zero tolerance policy that we saw during the Trump administration the first time.
We're talking with Alex Gangitano, the Hill's White House correspondent. For the nominations in the list that you just had that need Senate approval, what are the chances of a bipartisan vote? Yeah,
it's interesting. I think just general consensus of how Washington works, people tend to think that senators have a better chance of being confirmed just because you are kind of speaking in front of your peers for them to support you. And actually, that is coming to fruition already. Senator Rubio, we've seen some Democrats, John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, already come out and say he has my support. That's pretty huge. So it seems like that should be an easy one to go through. I think Kristi Noem is a controversial figure, as I spoke about earlier, but Republicans have a pretty strong a decisive, I guess, majority. They don't have it's up to 53, but I think she should be okay to get through. But, you just never know of who comes out and says, I have a something, as throughout the vetting process, I've learned about this person. I do think Elise Stefanik should be in the safe on a safe path to get confirmed. I think she has good relationships in the Senate. And Lee Zeldin, who is the pick for the Environmental Protection Agency, he's someone who was in Congress before he ran for New York governor. And he's been a outspoken defender of the former president. I do think he should probably get some support from senators as well.
Donald Trump has never been one that follows convention when he was in office and when he was running for a second term. As you're seeing these picks roll out, the way he's been doing it, the fact that it's been just 1 week since the election and he's doing it via a written statement, has that happened in the past, or is this new, and does it say anything?
Yeah, it's interesting how he's, giving these written statements out with a lot of detail about why he picked this person, what the background of them is. I think he is, a couple takeaways I've gotten from the way he's doing this is, one, he's moving really quickly. I think he's trying to show, I have this national security team. I have a team to implement my border policy. I told you these were things that were important to me on the campaign trail, and clearly I'm moving forward with them quickly. I want to get things moving on day one. That's one takeaway I have. But also, Trump previously would do things, make policy decisions on Twitter back in his first, now X, back in his first administration. So him putting out a statement like this, wanting to get his full word out, is typical of him. It's, I think this is what to expect from the former president, but I do think it's notable how quickly he's moving. The election was just a week away, and we have a pretty big slate of people already.
Alex Gangitano, The Hill's White House correspondent. Find their stories at thehill.com and on X at Alex Gangitano. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Story from Reuters. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto congratulated Donald Trump on his election victory in a phone call after landing in Washington on an official visit that includes a meeting with President Joe Biden on Tuesday. Prabowo, who has said he will pursue a non-aligned foreign policy, posted a video of his call to Trump made after he arrived from China, where he had met with President Xi Jinping on his first overseas trip since taking office last month. That was the article from Reuters. Here's part of that video that he posted.
Nice to talk to you. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I would like to congratulate you on your election as President of the United States of America. I would like...
thank you so much.
If possible, I would like to call personally on you. Wherever you are, I'm willing to fly to congratulate you personally, sir.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. Well, we'll do that anytime you want, but great job you're doing in Indonesia. Great job. Proud of you.
Sir,
Really amazing. And your English is so good.
Yes, sir. I've been.
Very good. The English.
I've been to. All my training is American, sir.
Ah, that's great. That's indeed. Yeah, we had a great election in the U.S. We had a great election. It's amazing what happened. We had tremendous success. The most successful in over 100 years, they say, and that's a great honor. So it gives me a very big mandate to do things properly.
And of course, we were all shocked when they tried to assassinate you, but we are very happy that the Almighty protected you, sir.
Yes, I got very lucky. I just happened to be in the right place in the right direction. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I got quite lucky, actually.
Yes, sir. And
somebody was protecting me, I guess.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Everything good?
Yes, sir.
Everything good?
Yes, sir. And I also had the honor of hosting Mr. Jared Kushner, and I hope to keep in touch with him again.
That's good. Well, whenever you're around, you let me know, and I'd like to also get to your country sometime. It's incredible. The job that you're doing is incredible.
Part of the video posted by the president of Indonesia of his phone call with President-elect Donald Trump. And then the president of Indonesia did go to the White House and met with President Joe Biden, who said they talked about the Indo-Pacific, climate, supply chains, Gaza, and the South China Sea. President-elect Donald Trump announced today that former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, a Republican, has been nominated to be U.S. Ambassador to Israel, writing, "Mike has been a great public servant, governor, and leader in faith for many years. He loves Israel and the people of Israel, and likewise the people of Israel love him. Mike will work tirelessly to bring about peace in the Middle East." In a story from ABC News, President Joe Biden hosted Israeli President Isaac Herzog at the White House on Tuesday as the outgoing administration seeks ceasefire progress in Gaza and Lebanon before President-elect Donald Trump takes power in January. While in Washington, Herzog's office said the president will also meet with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, whom Trump has chosen to serve as the next U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and Senator Lindsey Graham, a longtime foreign policy advisor to Trump. That was from ABC News. Here's part of the Oval Office meeting.
Well, Mr. President, welcome back to the Oval Office in the White House. You've been a friend for a long time, a personal friend, and you know my commitment to Israel is ironclad, and we share a deep friendship. And I want to thank you again for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always a great honor to be here in the Oval Office and to be with a friend such as you, Mr. President. I will start, of course, with the sad news of the day. In the last 2 hours, 2 Israelis were murdered by rocket attacks from Lebanon in the northern town of Nahariya, a beautiful seashore town in the northern part of Israel. Early in the day, a kindergarten teacher of a kindergarten of special needs, children with special needs, rescued bravely and wisely the toddlers in the kindergarten from a drone attack. A drone exploded in the kindergarten. This is what we're going through from Lebanon, Mr. President, and you know it all too well. We're fighting hard. We're defending our people, our brave soldiers and pilots. And I know that you're working very hard to make sure that this war will end and that there will be first and foremost security for the people of Israel as well as for the people of Lebanon. And in Gaza, we have 101 hostages, over 400 days. I know, Mr. President, that you know you're day in, day out actively seeking their safe return home as they are going through hell in the dungeons of Gaza. Clearly, you're thinking and working about the day after as well, which perhaps should be a trajectory of hope to the people of the region and the ability to have our neighbors as well as us live in security and peace. But first and foremost, we have to get the hostages back home. I agree. And it all starts in Tehran. It all starts in the Empire of Evil, where in Tehran with its proxies. They're doing whatever they can to derail stability and security and peace, calling for the annihilation of the State of Israel and seeking nuclear weapons. Mr. President, this has to be a major objective all throughout your term and the next term of the next president, because we have to make sure that they cannot fulfill their evil intentions. They're also a major engine of anti-Semitism, Mr. President, and I know how much you put a focus on fighting and combating anti-Semitism. But most importantly, I'm here on behalf of the people of Israel and the nation of Israel and the state of Israel to say to you, Mr. President, thank you very much. As we say in Hebrew, Toda Rabba. You've been an incredible friend of Israel and the Jewish people for decades.
The president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, in the White House Oval Office with President Joe Biden. President Herzog then gave President Biden a gift. He said it was an archaeological artifact from the foot of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which has the word Joseph or Yosef on it. He said, the Bible says that Joseph will strengthen Israel, and clearly, Mr. President, you've done it. From the Associated Press, the Biden administration says Israel has made good but limited progress in increasing the flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and it will not limit arms transfers to Israel, as it had threatened to do so a month ago if the situation had not improved. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about this today.
30 days ago, the administration put a timeline on Israel to get more aid into Gaza. Yesterday, Secretary Blinken met with Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs to talk about the steps that Israel has taken to improve the situation inside Gaza. But today, there are multiple international aid agencies that say that Israel has failed to address the concerns and that the situation is even more dire than a month ago. Does the administration think that Israel has taken enough steps, or do you agree with these aid organizations and their assessment?
So a couple of things. Let me just take a look back at the last 30 days. Israel has taken steps to address the measures laid out in that letter from the two Secretaries Blinken and also Austin. And we are in a discussion with the Israelis about both the important steps Israel has taken as a result of the United States intervention, as well as additional steps that need to be taken. So those conversations continue, those discussions continue. And we, the United States, is indeed the largest provider of humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. And so we are going to continue to do everything that we can to surge humanitarian assistance in Gaza. We understand how important it is. And in your question, we understand how dire that is. So ultimately, the long-term solution here to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza is bringing an end to this war. And so we're going to try and work very hard to continuing to achieving certainly that goal. And so that is certainly continuing to be a priority for us as we talk about what's happening in the region.
Is the administration, is the president satisfied with those steps, though, that Israel has taken over these past 30 days? Is it enough?
I did say that they have taken steps, and those discussions continue because we need more. We certainly need more aid to be surged into Gaza. So there's more work to be done, but we have seen certainly some improvement. And again, we are going to do everything that we can. The United States, we are indeed the largest provider of humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance into Gaza to relieve the pain of the Palestinian people. And what we're seeing, and you're right, it is dire, but those discussions continue, and we're going to be laser focused on that.
The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, part of her briefing at the White House. A couple of stories from Associated Press. A U.S. jury on Tuesday awarded $42 million to 3 former detainees of Iraq's notorious Abu Ghraib prison, holding a Virginia-based military contractor responsible. The 3 testified that they were subjected to beating, sexual abuse, forced nudity, and other cruel treatment at the prison. And a federal judge on Tuesday sentenced a Massachusetts Air National Guard member to 15 years in prison after he pleaded guilty to leaking highly classified military documents about the war in Ukraine. Jack Teixeira pleaded guilty earlier this year to 6 counts of willful retention and transmission of national defense information following his arrest in the most consequential national security case in years. That was all from AP. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Is it possible to use one word to remember or describe the 2024 presidential campaign? If so, that one word might start with the letter S. This year on the campaign trail, the S word seems to be everywhere. What were candidates talking about that required foul language? How did the crowds react to all the cussing and cursing? And did the candidates express any regrets about using vulgarity and profanity? Find out in the latest episode of C-SPAN's Podcast The Weekly. It's our first ever podcast that might be rated R because it's brought to you by the letter S. Find C-SPAN's The Weekly wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you listen to podcasts. Story from NBC News. U.S. climate envoy John Podesta urged governments to keep faith in the country's promise to combat global warming, saying President-elect Donald Trump can slow but not stop the transition from fossil fuels when he returns to office in January. The annual United Nations Climate Summit began on Monday in Azerbaijan, with many country delegations concerned that Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election on November 5th will hinder progress to limit planetary warming. Here is John Podesta.
And of course, I'm keenly aware of the disappointment that the United States has at times caused the parties of the climate regime who have lived through a pattern of strong, engaged, effective U.S. leadership, followed by sudden disengagement after a U.S. presidential election. And I know that this disappointment is more difficult to tolerate as the dangers we face grow ever more catastrophic. But that is the reality. In January, we're going to inaugurate a president whose relationship to climate change is captured by the words hoax and fossil fuels. He's vowed to dismantle our environmental safeguards and once again withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. That is what he has said, and we should believe him. The United States is a democracy, and in a democracy, the will of the people prevails. Our administration is working with the incoming administration to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power. But what I want to tell you today is that while the United States federal government under Donald Trump may put climate action on the back burner, the work to contain climate change is going to continue in the United States with commitment and passion and belief. As President Biden said in the Rose Garden last week, setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. This is not the end of our fight for a cleaner, safer planet. Facts are still facts. Science is still science. The fight is bigger than one election, one political cycle in one country. This fight is bigger still because we are all living through a year defined by the climate crisis in every country of the world.
John Podesta, senior advisor to President Biden for clean energy, innovation, and implementation at the annual United Nations Climate Summit, COP29, in Azerbaijan on Monday. The incoming EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin posting on X today, looking forward to getting straight to work as part of President Trump's cabinet to unleash U.S. energy dominance, make America the AI capital of the world, bring American auto jobs back home, and so much more. Story from the Washington Post. President-elect Donald Trump is preparing the U.S. government to adopt a more permissive stance toward cryptocurrency, eyeing a roster of industry-friendly candidates for key posts while his top advisors consult crypto executives on potential changes to federal policy. And from Reuters, Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller said Tuesday stablecoins are effectively synthetic dollars that can bring benefits to the financial system. Waller said these digital assets linked to the dollar could have a lot of potential benefits and eliminate inefficiencies in the financial system as part of comments before the Clearinghouse Annual Conference 2024 held in New York. But he said legislation is needed to deal with safety issues as these types of assets are subject to runs that could destabilize the financial system. That was from Reuters. Here is the Fed Governor Christopher Waller.
So in the crypto universe, you're trading all these objects. I've given some speeches on how I think about the crypto universe. But one of the critical things that popped up in trading in this world, this is a completely different set of rails, traditional rails, is that there's always a demand for a safe liquid asset, something with stable value that you can move in and out of positions. There wasn't such an instrument in the crypto world, so they created one. This is what you got to love about markets. There's a demand, there's a problem, they created a way to solve it. So they created stable coins, a dollar-denominated token that always paid off $1 no matter where it was. Had various firms that provided these stablecoins. Stablecoins were just a solution to a problem that existed in finance in the crypto world. When you look at it, it simply becomes a synthetic dollar. That's the way I often think about a stablecoin. A synthetic dollar, it has the same kind of properties in some ways as standard commercial bank money, that it can be used, redeemed at will. But because it's not backed by government, it's not backed by FDIC or anything like this, they suffer from run risk. You could see this with any of the stable coins. Back about 2 years ago when there was a crypto crash, there was a break in the peg on these things as people started running on the coins. That still would exist in anything that we would allow in the US through legislation. So what we would have to do is make sure legislation ensures, just like we do with banks, that if I go in and I want to convert my dollar in my checking account into a dollar bill, that I'm guaranteed I'm going to get that. That requires a lot of regulatory structure, a lot of things in the banking system to make that happen. You'd need a similar sort of thing with stablecoins. In terms of using it illicitly, again, that's where we want some information. We have to have some oversight and regulation of the stablecoins. But they can potentially unlock a lot of, if you think about just a simple payment stablecoin, not a banking function, but a true payment stablecoin. There's a lot of potential to eliminate efficiencies in the payment system in various other ways, allow entry, competition, and whatnot. And the banks are free to issue it themselves if they wanted to. I just see this as something that can have a lot of potential benefits. It opens up new sets of rails, new sets of trading. But we do want to have legislation to make sure that they're pretty much run-proof. We have better insight as to how it's being used. Once you're on a blockchain, you can track where it went and who had it. It's a lot easier to track that than US currency, I can tell you that much. So when people are worried about illicit finance, you can track on a blockchain a lot easier where this was, who had it, and what it was being done. And if you can control the entry and exit points, it's actually a lot safer than actual US currency.
Christopher Waller, Federal Reserve Governor, at the Clearinghouse Annual Conference in New York City today. On Wall Street, the Dow down 382, NASDAQ down 17, S&P also down 17. U.S. Supreme Court justices, writes Bloomberg Law, struggle to figure out whether a defendant can ever use physical force when they don't actually do anything. Arguments on Tuesday in a mob-related attempted murder case were part of an ongoing debate about what counts as a crime of violence for purposes of federal firearms charges. The charge carries a 5-year mandatory minimum prison sentence with possibility of life, which must be served concurrently to any other sentence. From lifeguards refusing to save kids to elderly ladies falling through manholes, the justices turned to extreme hypotheticals to try to help them draw the line. That was from Bloomberg News. The case is Delegati v. United States. Here's some of the oral argument. Justices Clarence Thomas and Sonia Sotomayor questioning attorney Alan Kidim.
So in your thinking, if you poison someone and thereby cause the death of that person, that is, in your argument, under your argument, treated differently from withholding critical, say, heart medicine when someone is in the process of having a heart attack.
That's correct, Your Honor. So this court has described poison as having forceful physical properties that you would have put into contact with the victim by putting it in their drink. That's a very different situation than someone who potentially through natural causes slips into distress and you don't take any action to put them into contact with any force, and there may not be any force involved if, for instance, it's a congenital disorder. So there's no force at all and you wouldn't have used that force actively.
I'm sorry, I don't know. You almost seem to be talking proximate cause. There's no force in the poison itself and what you did. The force is in the nature of the substance that goes through the person's body. Similarly, there's no violent force in a gentle push of a 90-year-old down the stairs. You could probably do it with a finger, so there's no violent force there. What you seem to be saying is, if I have a duty to act and I choose not to, I'm not responsible for the force that I let work on this human being. That's your position, correct?
No, Your Honor. So in both the poisoning example and giving a gentle push to someone who falls down the stairs or off of a cliff, you are not directly applying violent physical force. It's a gentle touch, or you're just letting the molecules of the poison fall from your hand. But there is still an application of violent physical force when they hit the ground at high speed.
I would tell someone who's freezing in the snow that there's an application of winter conditions to their body to kill them.
Sure. And in that instance, again, you might describe the elements as involving violent physical force, which perhaps you could describe as using indirectly if, for instance, you throw them out into the snow. But that's a very different situation than a pure omission where someone, let's say, has an allergic reaction.
It's not a pure omission, it's an obligation to act.
Sure.
I mean, I could be in a restaurant watching someone die, but I have no obligation, even if I know the Heimlich maneuver to do it. However, if it's a child and my child, I have an obligation to try to save them.
That's correct, and it is a serious offense.
So I'm letting nature use its force to kill that child.
So there's no dispute that it is criminally culpable behavior and can be punished severely. But the question is there violent force being applied to the victim, and have you actively employed that force? And in a situation where, for instance, you just don't provide medicine or nutrition to someone and they slowly expire, there is no violent physical force of any sort. It's not like hitting the ground at high speed. And moreover, you haven't taken any step to actively employ any force.
Attorney Alan Kedim questioned by Supreme Court Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Clarence Thomas in the oral argument. Today's case, Delegati v. United States, an appeal from Salvatore Delegati, a Genovese crime family associate known as Fat Sal, challenging a conviction on a gun charge that added 5 years to his prison sentence in a murder-for-hire plot. The legal question is, as Oye.org puts it, does a crime that requires proof of bodily injury or death, but which can be committed by failing to take action, have as an element the use, attempted use, or threatened use of physical force? Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Subscribe to C-SPAN's free evening newsletter Word for Word and get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox every day. You can sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.